Yeah, we're live. It is 1:50, and I am back home, as you can see, back home from West Tech. My plan originally was to be running this weekend on the dyno. What I wanted to run is, excuse me, after I got down to West Tech, I saw that one of the viewers had sent me out I paid for the shipping so that he could send out the Cross Ram for the 84 Corvette, also 82. Cross Ram fuel injection. What I wanted to do was compare it to TunePort, and I just wanted to compare the two setups back to back on the same motor. And we were going to be skewing this test anyways because we weren't going to be using a factory EFI setup. I mean, the factory computer and all that stuff. So guys can argue about that back and forth. I just wanted to see what that induction system did, what the TunePort induction system did versus the Cross Ram, and kind of see what happened there. We have some big differences between those two. One, the runner length is a lot longer in the TunePort setup. The Cross Ram really more of a, at least relative to the TunePorts, a mid-length in its design. It's not a short runner one. It's not a long one like the TunePort. The TunePort is kind of ultra long because the lower manifold, the TunePort, has a Cross Ram setup anyway. It just has the tubes that continue this up into the common plenum, and that's kind of cool. We've said it a number of times. I like that setup, and I think it's probably the best looking fuel injection setup that GM has introduced. It has the best visual appeal, I think. We know what it does because it's long runner. We know that it's designed for low speed power, and it's not going to make power at higher engine speeds. It can't because it doesn't. The runner length isn't conducive to that. Now, they did lots of things by Siamesing the runners, which effectively shortens the runners. And then there were a bunch of TunePort designs for those. So we've gone into all that. But how does it compare to the Cross Ram, which is much, much shorter, but also smaller? We've talked about the fact that the lower manifold in the Cross Ram the opening is really small. What I'll do in the video when we test that is I'll do an overlay like we did of the standard port versus the peanut port, or the rec port versus the peanut port, and the big block stuff. On this one, I'll just do an overlay of a standard intake gasket for a small block, your 1205 or 1206 probably, and then we'll show that relative to the port opening on the intake manifold. You can get an idea. Oh yeah, that's only a percentage of the 50-60% or whatever of the port opening, and that's part of why it's going to be limited in flow and limited in power. So but again, we want to see, does that help with low speed power relative to it not having long runners and all that. So the best way to do is just do a back-to-back thing. The other problem I'm running into, and you guys can let me know in the comments, one of the things we're going to run into is the test motors that I have are all these kind of cammed small blocks. And so we need something that's going to make like 350 horsepower or something. And the injectors in a Crossfire are not going to do that. In fact, the Crossfire, I don't think is going to support that anyway. Not a stock one at any rate. But we'll see how much it holds it back. And what I wanted to do, the idea is to compare both the TunePort and the Crossfire to a, your kind of run-of-the-mill dual plane and carburetor, 650 carburetor or something, to see how that compares. I kind of want to see what the difference is there and how restrictive that stuff becomes. And also we'll take a look at, obviously, the power curves and where they want to make power, relatively speaking. But it will be interesting. But the problem is that the carburetor will easily support the power level. The TunePort, we could put bigger injectors in that to support that. But we need to obviously change the injectors in the Cross Ram as well. And the problem is that we only have two of them to choose from. We only have two injectors. Now, we know that there are bigger ones for the big block and stuff. And what I was thinking about doing is just taking those injectors out and putting conventional injectors in. I was just going to put some 280s in there, or 1500s or whatever. And I was just going to run. And in fact, I'm going to do this. We'll see how it works compared to just replacing those with just bigger versions of that same style injector. We're going to be running them with the Holley management system anyway, so we can kind of optimize the air, fuel, and timing curves supplied. So we know that anything that we'd be doing is just a function of the design of that manifold and its attending airflow relative to its port length and flow rate, and the opening size of the throttle bodies themselves. Are they restricting power? It'll be interesting to take vacuum readings in the manifold to find out how that's working. What all this discussion is leading to the fact that when I went down there, I thought that Westech already had the tune port set up because I had used it before many times. There was a complete one sitting there. But because they're moving everything, that tune port setup is no longer there. And so what I want to do is I want to reach out and see anybody watching the video. Does anybody locally in California have a tune port setup that I can run? Maybe we can trade you something for it. I actually have the factory throttle body and the runners. Really what I need is the plenum and a lower manifold, and then the fuel rail assembly, because we'll just hook our dyno fuel rail, the fuel line, up to that fuel rail, and we'll make that work. And the problem is that both of those were, well, at least, excuse me, this whole setup was pitched because they didn't think they're ever going to run it again. And I'm the only guy really that goes there and runs, weird things like this to start as a baseline. It's like, how many different cast iron 2-barrel small block intake manifolds do you need? Because the only time, again, that's ever going to happen, like with the tune port setup, you're only going to use that as a standard baseline for starting with something to go to something else. But you have to have that to start it. I like starting with that 2-barrel, and then you go to a 4-barrel and do, we have videos up of all that stuff. Same thing with the tune port stuff. You want to start with the stock stuff and then go, okay, what happens if we do this and this and this and this? So I have the stock throttle body, I have a bigger throttle body. The bigger throttle body will also work on the LT1. We have that stuff. I'm not interested in doing fuel injection upgrades. All I want to do for this test is I want to find out how the tune port compares with the Cross Ram. And I think if I just stick regular Bosch injectors in there, I've already tested them. They'd go in perfectly. And all I have to do is, I think, we could just zip time in place, but I could also run a piece of fuel line or something on the outside of them so that they would actually wedge in that spot where these other larger injectors went, physically larger injectors, not in terms of flow rate. And then let me know what you think. You guys that know enough about these different types of fuel injectors. The fuel injectors that they use on the Cross Ram setup are different than your typical port injected deals, and so they'll probably have different flow patterns and different droplet sizes and stuff. So let me know what you guys think. Will just the change of injector change things? Will that hurt power? Will it help power? Will it make the thing run terrible? Given what we know about how a carburetor works, I kind of think it's going to work fine. And then what I would do is I'd just put 2 of those injectors in there, just hose clamp fuel line to it, run a T, run that over the regulator, and boom, we're done. And then we just have to run the injector harness to it. It just takes an odd size and an even size, and then we just batch fire it, and it all just works. And then we can control the timing with an MSD distributor, and away we go. And then we're only limited by, like I said, the things that are going on with the manifold. We're limited by the airflow supplied by the combination of air, throttle body size, and opening in the manifold, and the fuel. That's the other thing to think about is on a tune port setup, you're only flowing air through the throttle body, through the plenum, through the runners, down to the lower manifold, and you're only introducing fuel basically right at the cylinder head. In this case, you're introducing fuel through the throttle body. So 2 things happen. One, we've talked about this, we get charge cooling associated with the fuel being entered, into the manifold, which is good, but beneficial for power. But also, we reduce flow of that setup because we're having flow. It's having to flow air and fuel, and the fuel is going to displace some of the air. So some of the airflow potential goes away because we've added fuel. Luckily, we're not adding a ton of fuel, so it's not displacing a whole bunch, but it is displacing some of it. And so the amount of air that we could get through that thing now is lessened. We have bigger ones. You could put we could mill it and machine it and put a dual throttle body on each side. You know, there's lots of things that you could do. And we'll be entertaining some of that stuff later on. But for right now, the first test I wanted to do is I just want to compare the Crossfire versus the tune port and kind of see what happens, kind of see where they are. So we can go, oh, look, here's what the curves do. One of them's way better, one of them's way worse. Whatever it is, whatever that result is, will the internet and the people out there will have something to talk to. So it'll be kind of cool. That's why I'm looking forward to that test. I think it's good information. And then we'll see how the stock stuff does. And then we could talk about then doing modifications to it. I mean, you know, the easy way is just do a new plate and then we put whatever we want on it. You know, we could put I could talk to the guys from Holley, put 2 Holley 2 barrels on there, 2 Holley 4 barrels or whatever, and then just make that work. And that would be fine, assuming then we could get the lower portion to flow enough and have the port exit on the manifold, have that work. And, you know, there's lots of cool things that we could get done. So the other thing I wanted to mention that I put in the description is that I have a camshaft. So this one, Cam Motion, it's an LS cam. It is a 222, 232 on a 108 plus 3, 5 sub, so less than 600 horsepower, 580 something. So that cam available only to the people from the live feed, $129 if anybody's interested. So if you need a camshaft and you wanted the super cheap deal, you're getting that because you're a live feed guy or gal, and so $129 shipped. So trying to help out the guys that are coming to the live feed, you know, give them a little reward. So our poll for today will be okay, will the Crossfire injection make more peak power than the tune port injection? Peak power. And we'll start a poll, and away we go. Tonight, nothing. Tonight's a date night, so Lacey and I are going to go out and have drinks or something, so it'll be fun. I just got back from West Tech, so, you know, gotta take care of the ones you love. Hopefully everyone's having a wonderful day. Richard, what chassis dyno without attack? What are your tips when chassis dynoing without attack? The way that they do it at West Tech, because a lot of these chassis dynos don't have inductive pickups, which I find just baffling on why that's not the case. It's such an easy thing. It's one of the things I loved about the DynoJet stuff is that you just hook a clip up to the plug wire and away you go. You can do it a couple of ways. For the pickups, you could put you know, sensors on the balancer and things. What they do is measure wheel diameter, and then they plug in if this works best. If you have a 1-to-1 drive in one of the gears that you're testing it in, so that they can calculate vehicle speed and wheel speed, engine speed versus wheel speed. And then they just plug that into, this is a Superflow that they're using, and then they plug that in, and so they can get the tack fairly close. I mean, if you're just doing a baseline thing, then you can just do horsepower and not worry about torque. You just horsepower versus you know, wheel speed. But there are ways to get torque from that. Marshall, Eric, Shadow Ops. Good heads on a TPI will help. Fortunately, I'm not local, but I have a set of fuel rails. Okay, Richard, I have a Mile 327, 68. What would be a good rowdy sounding cam? So make power. Alex, take a look at the 327 videos I have up. We put one of the modern comp cams in, and it was a solid roller. It had a good healthy idle to it and made a good bit more power than the factory stuff. Blue collar, I gave you the specs on the $129 cam. Co-worker of mine is a 3rd-gen Camaro. That was a TBI that would have been converted to TPI. And the wiring is a basket case. Uh-oh. Yeah, that would be hard trying to stay with the factory stuff. On the engine dyno, at least it's a little, or on the engine dyno, it's a little bit easier. I just bought a 6-liter LS to build for my dad's El Camino. I'm going to do my best to start tuning into all these. That's cool. Crossfire may have a chance with the 454 injectors. Yeah, the big block stuff, I saw a couple of injectors because I actually went while I was down there. I did this on Friday, and it's been hot down there, so it was a hot walk. But I went through every aisle of the wrecking yard that I go to right around the corner from West Tech, and went to every aisle to try to find any kind of tune port car. Now, in the past, I have gone there and found many, many of them. And in most cases, the tune port stuff, a lot of the stuff is already taken off. For some reason, guys are wanting to get to the injectors or the rail or something else or something internal in the motor or whatever, and they had to take the intake manifold off. So a lot of times we could find stuff just laying around, especially runners. We could find that easily in PLENUM. Those were simple. But I wasn't able to find anything. There were 0 tune port cars anywhere in that wrecking yard. And like I said, rather than just calling or asking or whatever, I like to go look, because sometimes you can see stuff on the ground, and plus I got to go walk through a wrecking yard. I mean, like I said, it was a hot walk. But it was still cool. I didn't spend as much time as I would have wanted. I didn't do any video, and I didn't look through all of the stuff. I was purposely telling myself the whole time that I'm walking down the aisle, Camaro, Corvette, Camaro, Corvette, Camaro, Corvette. Don't look at, oh, wait, hey, look, somebody was taking out a K24, and, there's always lots of stuff to look at. But the only things I found were V6 Camaros and Firebirds, but no early tune port stuff. Bro, thanks for being a patient teacher. I'm happy to help. Richard, I wish I still had mine. It was in an 85 Camaro. Not a lot of power, but the 700 R4 transmission was also a weak point. Yeah, they were designed to make torque, which they did a lot of, and they worked very well and would still get good mileage and stuff. And so they're really fun to drive. If it's something that you wanted to just like, spin the tires and do donuts and stuff, they were really good for that. That basket case TPI Camaro my co-worker bought. I run a quad TBI EFI and call it a day. Getaway, what's going on? A soft spot for tune ports. I have a decent running 350 TPI car in the mid-90s, 13 O's, traction limited, full weight car. Nice. 1250s with slicks. That's fast. Got a TPI, I'd give it to you for free. 5.7 TPI cars were pretty quick, just add nitrous. I had an 85 Corvette, and it was a 1390 car, and it had almost nothing. It had nothing done to it internally. It had, the normal kinds of things: an air cleaner, airfoil, some sort of, prom chip thing. I'm sure with better heads and cam, TPI will do better. If I'm not mistaken, the map on the TPI and TPI engines were the same. Like my turbo TPI setups. Yep, that's a good combination. Katie, yeah, I need a tune port setup. Last TPI car I had was sold in 2013, 91 Formula 350. Cool. How much could a stock TPI torque be improved with a very low LSA cam or with a higher lift cam or compression ratio? You're going to need more than just the camshaft, but you could get some improvements in peak torque. Compression would help that. The higher lift might not. the tighter LSA, if you do the other things that are not just that are valve event things, with the right camshaft, you could pick up peak torque, certainly. Blue collar, that's what it is. That's what cam it is. Israeli GM map sensors are pretty universal across all NAG engines, GM engines. Yeah, we don't have to worry about that because we have a whole box of map sensors. My guess is no, because it's torquey. How's the guy locking a deal on the camshaft? Here, I'll put my email address down. I put my email address down. Sounds like the cam's too big for my project. What is the biggest cam that can be put in a stock LC before having to worry about piston to valve clearance? Something in the mid to high 230s at 50. Best Chinese inexpensive cam for a 5.3. You don't want to buy those cams. In fact, I was just reading a post that Matt responded to about a guy showing his lifters in his camshaft, and because they were cheap China stuff, and they were just destroyed. He said the lash was fine, the lifter wasn't turned because two of the lifters went bad. They were both oriented properly. It had new lifter trays in it. I wouldn't get those. I have cams that I'll guarantee. So if you're looking for a cam, I have some that are 179 and they're brand new, and it's a low buck truck camshaft. And then I have one that's a little bit bigger than that. And for most 5.3s, those are pretty good choices. Getaway, have you seen any Jeremy's faster proms? His 87 C4 highly modified. The car is pretty fast. Got the Iron LS1 in my truck on June 22nd. Both the new crank trigger and cam sensor were bad from Rock Auto. Uh-oh. You put the 4.8 stuff in there? I like using known stuff. I'm always skeptical of getting new stuff from especially from like a local auto parts store. But did you know what the max horsepower torque flow would be on a TPI? Do you mean, do we know how much it would support? You can see what we did on, I have some TPI videos up on what it does, but it would depend on what kind of motor you have underneath it. If you put that tune port set up, but you put it on a 450 or 60 or inch, dedicated small block build, it would make more because it would have more draw on that manifold. The manifold ultimately is going to be limiting it, but I think trying to think on that 383 where we were. Let me take a look and see where we were. To give you an idea, this wouldn't be the most ever that I've seen, although I haven't seen anybody try to make the most from a stock tune port setup. That seems like an exercise in frustration. Final stock TPI. So that one made 410 horsepower and 500 foot-pounds of torque. And that was a 383 with a pretty big cam, compression, knitted airflow research head. So it was a pretty good combination. And so the stock tune port setup would be somewhere in that range. I rock. No, you rock. I rock humor. I have 4 sets from early and 90s, Canna valve 1 year only. Oh, that's too bad. Yeah. Westech had a bunch of them. They had like 4 or 5 tune port motors, and I don't know where all those tune port things went. Had 2 rockers loose, either bolts are not torqued or backed out, replacing the GM performance rockers. Uh-oh, that's not good. Just TPI intake or the whole thing, harness and ECM. I don't need a harness. I don't need a computer. I don't need any of that. I just need the mechanical parts. And like I said, I really only need the lower manifold and the plenum. If it has the gaskets, that would be cool. It'd make life easier. And the fuel rail. Because I have a throttle body and I have runners. How much cam can I run on my 03 6-liter and still not affect running AC? The camshaft shouldn't affect running AC. Are you worried about it dropping the idle down too low? I voted no because I hate cross ram injection. Get a cam from Richard. Hard to beat what he offers. I've seen Rockwell Hardness test on those China cams. It's not good. No, Brian's done a bunch of testing on those. In fact, he got at least one that I know of that was supposed to be I think it's supposed to be a Truck Norris cam. It's a China copy of the Truck Norris cam, and it was none of that. It wasn't a copy of the Truck Norris cam. The lobes were not consistent anyway, but they were much closer to a stock cam, and it was a flat tappet cam, so it would have it wasn't even like a billet roller cam. It would have immediately ate itself to death, and so just not a good idea. Really curious about the test results regarding the pole. Right now we're at, will the cross ram or the crossfire injection make more peak power than the tune port? Almost 70% are saying no. I'm going to be stuffing 1,000 horsepower into my TPI setup and see going to buy a first intake, pushing the TPI limits with my twin compound setup. That's all good stuff. Adding nitrous with boost, does it tune different? Yes. Too much vacuum will affect AC idle. How would increased vacuum change the AC idle? I thought maybe too little would hurt it. I've seen reviews on bronze bushing trunnions. I wouldn't bother with them. Save the money and time. Get the OEM or BTR units for the LS. Given what we've done with factory rockers and the fact that mine have 350,000 miles on them now, they work pretty well. Is there a nitrous company you prefer over all the other ones? No, not really. If I run too much cam, it will affect the ability to run AC like vacuum. Well, that's what it doesn't mean too much vacuum. It means too little vacuum. So if you get a big camshaft in it, the thing will not want to idle very well. What is it you're trying to do other than run AC in your combination? Give me an idea of what the combination is and how much power you want to make and all that, and then we'll steer you in the right direction for a camshaft. Appreciate your input about the max low horsepower. Always curious. Would you say the runners are the biggest restriction or the throttle body? No, all of it is. Everything on it is sized to make the power output for the power output that they wanted to make from the factory. It's not that it's was made incorrectly. It was made correctly for what they were trying to do. They were not trying to make power, but everything is restrictive. The flow rate of every component is restrictive, but also the design of the manifold is ultimately going to be restrictive too, because its runner length was designed to make peak power below 5,000 RPM. So even if let's say it flowed a whole bunch more, which we have done ported ones and big tube ones and that kind of stuff, the motor still made power in that RPM range. So you're never going to get it to make power at a high engine speed, because that's not a flow situation. That has much more to do with the runner length. Aaron, what's going on? I heard an engine with the Cross Ram intake and it didn't run smoothly. The factory stuff ran very smooth. Junkyard in Lake Stevens, Washington. Is that Washington? Has 2 TPI vets in the yard now. Should they get you some parts? I don't know. Let's see if somebody has something sitting around in there. I thought people would have a whole bunch of them in their garages. Sean, do you have electric fans on there? And do you have both the fans on when it's sitting there at idle? Ron, that's all I need. A plenum, lower manifold, and fuel rail. Sean, that's not a the 500 foot-pounds and 450 horsepower thing is a 383 with a really big camshaft in it. So it's actually not a good combination. It just worked for our test because that's what we happen to have at the time. But you won't make. I mean, you might get close to 500 foot-pounds, but and then you can take a look at that tune port video and see there are other choices besides the factory tune port setup. There are other different tune port systems that you can run. I checked with a friend of mine. He had one sitting in the garage. I know there just used to be a bunch of them sitting around. I would just kick them around, and because nobody cared about them except when I would do stuff with them. It's been a long time since tune port stuff was a thing. The runners can differ. What's different about the runners? Is a 305 and a 350 runner different? %70 on our poll there. What I'd like to see on the Crossfire setup is I'd like to see it make like reasonable torque, not like tune port torque, because it's not going to do that. But I'd like to see it make more peak power somewhere, like out when the tune port thing fell off. But I just don't know if that's going to happen with that port size on those things. It's wild how all the aftermarket TPI stuff is pretty much evaporated. Well, I mean, look at the marketplace. There can't be much of a market there. Got to adapt a Jag M90 to smaller Chevy TPI runners. I actually saw another, is it Range Rover, I think, has the supercharger with the 2 intercoolers on them. I saw one of those. I saw another one of those in the wrecking yard when I was walking around, just specifically looking for tune port stuff. But I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That's got a blower on. I got to stop and look at that for a second. And it was there. It was still there. The LS replaced it. Yeah, the LS didn't replace the L98. The LT did that long before the LS came along. We've seen a lot of new TPI builds coming out around here, at least a couple of years. That's cool. They do what they do. It's just limiting in terms of where that they can make peak power. And even if you were to make them bigger, like the first setup, I'm sure is like that. I'd like to try one of those. That would be kind of cool. Just like I'd like to try one of the big dog ported Cobra or GT40 setups. I'd like to try one of those because I just, it's been a long time since I ran a bunch of intake manifolds on a Ford. In fact, we're going to be running some stuff with Sanchez. So maybe I'll reach out to those guys and see. Say 130 through PayPal. So make sure that you put your shipping address on the PayPal order. And if you didn't put it on there, I'm going to refund your money, because I can't have the shipping address on an email and then have the order on PayPal. The shipping address has to be on the PayPal order. Otherwise, it's just going to get sent to the wrong place. You can, if you haven't put it on there, you can add it to, you can send me a note on PayPal. You can, I think it's a message. You can send a message on email on PayPal and then include your address on there. Just picked up a few cars from an earlier year TPI formula, 40,000 miles. Nice. Remember my brother had a Trans Am with a 350. It'd go up the hill without having a rev. That's the idea I had when I thought of a powerful car. More powerful would be available on tap. They had a lot of torque. They had a really big promise of like, this thing is really going to go when you nail the throttle. They felt very, very torquey. It's just that they just kind of ran out of steam. What if you could do a secondary set of LS injectors on top of TPI? Like how... yeah, you could put injectors on the top of the plenum on a tune port setup if that's what you're talking about. That was done way back on the Celine manifold on the Fords, where they injected it. They had a rail. I mean, they had provisions for you drilling and tapping for all the injectors. Then you make a rail, and then you put injectors in the plenum, and then inject the fuel into the plenum. Same kind of thing. You could do that with a tune port and put it on there. But with the tune port, we don't have an issue with fuel. We can put more than enough fuel in because we just change the injector size for the fuel. And since they're never going to make a whole bunch of power anyway, it's pretty easy to get enough injector to make tune port power, let's say. But putting them up top would definitely add power. I have some... I think I have some LT1 headers. And by LT1, I mean the C7 Corvette LT1 headers. Let me see if I have the part number here, in case anybody's interested, because we're never going to run them on the dyno again. Yes, they're Hooker Blackhearts. They're 1 7/8, 3-inch collector, 304 stainless, 4C7, 701-01322-RHKR. And we've only run them, I think, one time on the dyno. So if anybody's interested in those headers, let me know for a C7, 1 7/8 for a C7. It's full stainless, yo, 304. I can blow the tires off uphill in my turbo TPI stuff, and the hill is an 8% grade or something. Yeah. Big Dog said that they can get 280 CFM out of a ported 351 EFI intake manifold. I'd believe that. They shorten the runners inside the upper of the same intake, and we'll do the welding if you want to test before and after. What welding needs to be done? Sean, fuel for the tune port is not a limiting factor. Fuel for the Crossfire injection, if you use the factory injectors, would be limiting, but there are bigger injectors that we can put in there. A 3-3 with the AFR 195s, an Excel Super Ram, and a Vortec was about the best combination back in the day. That is a good combination. I had a 406 that was like that had airflow 185s. In fact, mine might have been, I think mine were 210s on the 406. And then I had a pretty good size hydraulic roller cam in it, and the Excel Super Ram, and then a Vortec on it. And it made really good power. Off subject, one of my cars I picked up is a 57 New Yorker with a 392 Hemi. Oh, very cool. If we put an M90 on a TPI, can we hop Coke can? Yeah, I think you can. The pack just informed me that they're hungry. You got to take care of the dogs. 30 minutes past dinner. Yeah, if you're 1 or 2 minutes past, they know what time it is. They have a really good time reference. Yeah, engines like the LT5 have the second injector spray on the valve to reduce. Yeah, but not all of them do, though. The LT1 doesn't, or the L86 doesn't either. The upper gets cut open, then rewelded, closed after porting. Cast aluminum sucks to weld, especially. Yeah, I tested a lot of those ported and welded Cobra manifolds back in the day. We did a bunch of extrude-honed ones back in the day and stuff. You know, like I said, I'd like to retest that. We've seen guys both shorten those runners in the Cobras and the cast Cobras, and also put spacers in to basically have more plenum volume. I don't think that there was a big change in power from the plenum volume, but you know, I'm willing to test it. I was really hoping there would be a version of the 6th gen Camaro to get an LT5 or some easy way to swap the LT5 blower. Yeah, I know they were running when I was at West Tech, Ish was running an LS with a 2650 blower on a, I think it was like a ZL1 motor, but it had the 2650 on it. And they were making pulls when I was leaving and stuff. So, but I think it was around the 900 horsepower range or so when I was there. AJ just ordered a Truck Plus. Thumbs up. Did you get the specs on that? Might as well go back to PFI and not DFI. I think having the secondary injector is a good idea. Especially for, you know, to get all of that reversion gunk off of there. It's all full of gunk. Still at 70% Tavos. Like to get a 2650. They're good blowers. I mean, they. And the interesting thing is, one of the things that I asked Ish to do while we were there is it had a 102 millimeter throttle body on it. I'm like, well, if you're at 900 horsepower, I think that 102 is going to be restrictive. And so he put a vacuum reference on it. I said, well, if you can measure the vacuum behind there, I said, we'll know if it's a restriction, and it definitely was. It definitely was. AJ wanted to do a single turbo, single cab truck, and you're going to go with the Truck Plus. Does it have a converter or something in it? And is it a 5.3? Oh, excuse me. Just about to finish the 71 Jeep build-up. Starting on the twin turbo 406, 64 and polish. It'll only take a week or so to get it done on there. Nice. That's pretty fast. Pretty dang speedy. Nice thing about both my cars is, at least presently, they both look just fine. Nice. On normal street tires, good. The Metro hook's fine too. It doesn't, you know, get all out of shape when you give it the beans. Oh, I want to drive that thing now. Now that because I've only driven it before when it had no timing in it and didn't have the map hooked up and stuff. No converter yet. Taylor, I can. I'll send your stuff out now. I don't think it'll go out today because it's Saturday. I don't know if our local might be able to. We'll see. I already have your mailing labels printed out, so I just got to tape them on there. Got some stuff. Looking forward to seeing you break records. We're not going to break records with this Metro, just with the, in fact, I was going through all of the, I was looking for the distributor when I was down there in my storage area, and I'm sure that I have it, except I could not find it. I found a lot of Sprint stuff. In fact, I found a clutch. I found an ACT clutch, at least the disc. So now all I need to do is buy a pressure plate. So we can have a racing clutch. And I forgot that I have a ton of stuff for the Sprint. I have the ported head. I found the valves. I found the springs. I found head studs for it. I found a bunch of stuff. Found my Super Richie custom manifold. What I was trying to do back then actually was make the runner length longer, because what I wanted to do was have it get better fuel mileage under cruise. I wanted to improve the low speed, the ultra low speed power while under cruise, so that I didn't have to go into boost on any of the like rolling hills. CK, what's going on? So I'm going to have some more things like this cam, you know, cheap deals for guys for the live feeds, because, you know, we need to do some giveaways and take care of you guys. In fact, before I go, we're going to turn off our poll at 71%. I'm going to have another poll. And so I want to do a, people have been getting on me to do this since the very beginning, but I want to do a Patreon account. And so what I want to find out, and this will be the poll question. Okay, would you guys like or use a 10% discount to Summit Racing parts? So as part, what I want to do as part of the guys that are supporting me on the Patreon is you get to get 10% off of Summit Racing parts. So if you buy something that's $100, you save $10. You buy something that's $1,000, you save $100. So would you guys be interested in that? Is basically the thing. Start a poll there, because what I want to do is have value for the guys that are supporting the channel, and that's one of the things that I came up with. And if you guys are interested in that, then please let me know, and then I can actually make that happen. So I can get people you know, better deals off of the Summit stuff. Clutch, is it the band? Is it the big rubber band? Dean, you're on the winning team. That's twice in a row. One more time, and we have what's called a winning streak. I started getting their catalog in the mail. I don't know if you discussed it in a different stream, but what stall would you run with a Truck Plus for a street strip combination? What size motor is it? If it's a 5.3, I would be looking at 25 to 2800. If it's smaller, I would go to the high side. If it's bigger, like on a 6.0, you really could just use a stock converter, but a 2500 would still help. The converter is always going to improve performance. Wonder what 2 carbs would do adopted to the Crossfire. That could work. You could put 2 barrels on it, and that would be fine. You just have to put, you know, we'd have to mill out the hole or just hole saw it. Who doesn't want a Summit discount? No on the poll. How does somebody say no to that? My Corvette will continue needing parts. And it works for everything. It doesn't have to just be a camshaft. It could be lots of stuff. Bigger radiator, more powerful fans. Yep. Shadow, I'm sorry to hear about the rockers and stuff, man. That's a bummer. I still need the cosmetic stuff. Do you have cams for a Ford 5.2. What is a 5.2 2 valve? A 5.4 2 valve? I think I still have. One set of cams for the 5.4 for a 2 valve. Need that dual airfield gauge so I can keep an eye on it, make sure it's not going to blow up. I definitely could use a 10% discount to Summit. Trying to make a purchase. What are you trying to get, Tim? And I have some nitrous setups too, if anybody's interested in some nitrous setups. Carbureted and fuel injected. RLS pistons and rod combo. Tim, send me an email. Maybe I can help you out. Marine cam spec out pretty good for TPI. TPI cams tend to be low in duration and wide in LSA. And then if you're using the stock heads, they're going to be low lift things too. It's not time yet, Sean? You need a 4.8 cam, looking at the ProLus truck cams. What are the duration on the cams that you're looking at? Uh-oh, Tim, you're getting tired of it? I feel like that every time I go into my storage area. I want to get rid of all of this stuff. I hate all of this stuff. It's just in my way. Come across the ZF5 Ford truck 5-speed manual for sale? No, I don't have that. KD, you hit Summit once a week? I know I buy a lot of stuff from them. So I brought back from West Tech the Stealth Ram that somebody wanted, and brought back Taylor's intake. What else? And I posted up a bunch of things for intakes on Instagram too. Speaking of Summit, they have Summit branded items that are 10% off now. That's a good deal. So what are we looking at? 83% are saying yes. 24 votes. Good place to sell a new cam at is a good question. I don't understand the question there. Are you asking where is a good place to sell a cam? Does someone have the MSD intake I want to move to? I assume they do. Not sure if it's worth getting a different throttle body though. 102 to 103 doesn't seem like. Yeah, if you have 102, I wouldn't worry about that. And if you're going to put something on it, you'd put a 105. You'd put a Holley 105 on it because I think that's what the opening is designed to accept. I think. But yeah, you're not. That's not going to be. This would be a great community for Summit to target for sales, especially since Jags went so far downhill with service. I agree. I've been trying to get a hold of somebody at Jags marketing because I wanted to see if they wanted somebody to do either videos or even dyno stories for them, like I do that for Summit. And I wanted to see if they were interested in that, but I don't even have any idea how to contact anybody there. The MSD Atomic will pick up over my Fast 102 because of runner length. I don't know specifically. I don't know that I've measured that, or if I did, I don't remember. I just know that when we ran the MSD on a LS7, that it makes more power than it does than the Fast does. It's not great with oil stains. Yeah, that's. But and also you could sell your Fast because there'll definitely be LS7 guys that want that. Have the email of a sales manager. Yeah, Tim, if you want to send it over, that would be fine. He might be able to steer me in the right direction. Cornfed, I don't know what you mean by my thoughts. I would Fast over Atomic. The Fast LS7 doesn't make as much power as the Atomic LS7 does. Ordered a polished timing cover for a 406 from Jegs and got 2 of them last week. Nice, that's a good deal. Got new seals on it too since I took it apart. Brake cleaned it. I just had a bunch of stuff show up. I had the headers for the, what do we have here? I had the headers for the V6 show up. I had an Edelbrock intake for the 4.3 show up. I had another 4-barrel intake for a small buck Chevy show up. I had a Ford distributor that's been there though, and a set of wires show up. So I bought quite a few things. So you got 2 more minutes. 84% saying yes. So maybe we will do that. And then do guys want things like stickers and shirts and things like that? Is that pretty much what guys like? Is that what you're all about? Is that what this is all about? Let's see here. I just want to watch my camera adjust. Does Eagle make reputable rods, or should I look at a better brand or a touch above? I've used the Eagle stuff, and I look at it like this. Most people look at it like, what's the best rod I could buy that's never going to break? Well, you're going to break anything if you detonated it. What I look at it is, what have we done with stock rods? Okay, so I'm never going to want to do the things that we've done already with stock rods. If I put any kind of forged rod in it, it's definitely going to be better than any stock rod. So I look at it as the first step up is usually, it's like putting a camshaft in it. So if you put a low buck truck camshaft in a truck north or something, you put a camshaft in it, you get a big jump. Yeah, there are bigger cams that you could put in and you could get more. Just like there are more expensive rods or whatever that you could put in there. Oh, this one's, this one is a better rod and it will. But when are you at the level of needing whatever the extra is for that extra rod, assuming that it's better? How have you put yourself, your motor combination in RPM or power or load? What have you done to put it in the range where that's going to be, it's going to need to be that, and it's not going to be something else? Usually the thing that breaks the motor is almost always something else. I have very rarely seen the actual structural integrity of something like a crankshaft or a connecting rod be the problem. It's almost always tune is the big thing. Corn-fed, what EGT temps are getting dangerously high for a turbo on E85? Well, what are your EGTs now? And your EGT is not just a function of what's happening with the turbo. The EGT is a function of what's happening with timing. Your EGT should not be high if the air fuel is correct and the timing is correct and the back pressure is not excessive. I got stock LS7 rods. Aren't those titanium? Very cool. I just got tubular front suspension, disc brakes, everything. Gonna need a twin turbo 64. I have 4 GT30s. Nice. CALIs, they have the base comp star, and then they move up, looking for 800 wheel horsepower max, only dyno or strip use. Yeah, I think for 800 horsepower, any sort of rod that you put in there is going to be fine. All right, Taylor, we'll see you, man. I have an Eagle rotating assembly in service. It's boosted, does well. Air titanium number 8 valve hit the piston, punted it sideways, and cracked the block. Uh-oh. Rods all look mint somehow. Wow. So did it push the piston over and crack the block, but it didn't? Did it not do anything to the rod? I don't know how the rod doesn't get jammed up and at least push the pin through the piston if the piston stops, or if that happened at the top. I don't know how it doesn't bend the rod or jack the rod up. 1 minute. Tim, happy to help. So on the EGT question, did you get back to me yet? It's a GM, Melling, Crowder, Crane, Elgin for stock cams. Who's wanting stock cams? I think we used a lot of Eagle stuff back in the day on the small block Ford stuff. Membership has its privileges. My EGTs are 800 at idle, 1300 on a cruise. EGTs are mounted 12 inches before the turbo. Okay, so none of that is out of line. I would be concerned what they are at wide open throttle. And then I would want to know what is the air fuel under cruise and what is the timing under cruise. Another Eagle crank running scat rods and probe forged pistons. That's what we did a lot on the Ford stuff back in the day. And on that note, it is time to go. Thank you guys all for showing up. And I got a bunch of emails I got to get to now. Apparently people were interested in some of the stuff anyway. But I'll see you guys all later.